Hello, I'm Steph from iDriver Classic, and today I'm showing you the Rolls Royce Silver Dawn. This particular example is from 1954. Now, if you've never seen a Silver Dawn before, that might be because there were less than 800 of these beautiful cars ever made. And if you've never seen one, you are in for a treat today, because in the video I'm going to show you around the outside, I'm going to show you the interior, under the bonnet, inside the boot, and of course we're going to take it out on a test drive. Now, if you know anything about these Silver Dawns, you'll know that pretty much all of them are automatic, and this is one of only 50 manual examples ever made. So it's quite a special bit of kit, and I'm going to show you how that box works as well. So without further delay, let me show you the Rolls Royce Silver Dawn. The Rolls Royce Silver Dawn was brought into a new world for Rolls Royce. Gone was the era of the 30s where Rolls had several models, all largely unique in their parts listings. And the company had survived the war and contributed their war efforts, and now faced life in a new era, one where money wasn't so freely available and the customer needed something a little bit different. Unlike others which faltered, Rolls rose to the challenge and created the new rationalised range, a range which cut their base costs and delivered in a range of cars which would meet the needs of their customers. Now, it would be remiss of me to talk about the Silver Dawn and fail to mention the Bentley MK, which was introduced in 1946. The car, with its 4,257cc engine, 4-speed manual transmission, sturdy chassis frame and independent front suspension, was complemented by something new. It was an attractive all-steel saloon body designed by an in-house team led by Ivan Everden. This was a move away, of course, from that pre-war ethos of coach builders coming in and creating the final look of the cars. The success of this car was then instrumental in creating change for Rolls-Royce. The demand for the Mark6 had always outstripped the supply, but in the USA, Bentley sales amounted to less than 3% of the output. So in plain speak, this means that Rolls-Royce see this as a market gap that they can fill with a model, and they then introduced the Silver Dawn, which is the car we're testing today. Well, this is a later one. But anyway, there are of course styling variations between the Rolls and the Bentley, and some of these are down to simple things like the radiator. However, the team didn't stray far from the team who'd created the successful formula of the Mark6, and John Blatchley, who had created the Bentley's interior, oversaw tweaks to the Silver Dawn. You might recognise that name because John then later on goes to become the chief stylist at Rolls-Royce, and some of his successes include the Silver Cloud and the Silver Shadow. Mechanically, both cars share a lot of DNA, which plays into that rationalisation strategy. However, the Bentley was fitted with twin SU carbs and a slightly different camshaft, and it's worth mentioning some of this is down to the preference and the overall environment of the export market. The car, after all this hard effort, then comes to market in 1949, and as I mentioned for reasons later when we're inside the car, it is export only. The overseas market are some of the first to cast eyes on this, and it goes on show first of all at the 1949 International World Fair in Toronto, Canada. And if you're wondering who it was aimed at the connoisseur who wanted quality and luxury but didn't need a chauffeur. Although this was the first Rolls-Royce to be offered as a complete vehicle, there was the option for coach building, and of the cars made, and there are varying numbers on this by the way, only 64 buyers picked this option. Rolls-Royce, despite a very small production run, didn't rest on their laurels with the car that they'd introduced at that International World Fair, and in 1951 they took the engine up to the 4,566cc engine, followed by the larger boot introduction in 1952. These features are both evident and displayed on this car we're testing here today. And if you're wondering how long the car's in production, it comes to an end in 1955. In 2010, the Rolls-Royce Enthusiast Club Yearbook does a big feature on these, and I've used a lot of that information for this video today. And the writer of that piece was the father of the man who owns this car, and that man was Roy Brooks, and he stated that over 70% of these cars in 2010 were still in existence. The price for a decent one today, however, has increased a lot since 2010. 2010, allegedly you would only need around 20 to 30,000 to get a good example. However, if you want one that's as good as this one we're testing here today, you're not going to be getting much change for £50,000. But then, of course, luxury is never cheaply obtained. Coming inside this Rolls Royce, they get it so right, don't they? And you see this so much with these older Rolls, is that the design truly is timeless. And a lot of people misuse that word, and what they really mean is it encapsulates a certain moment in time. But coming into here, it truly does feel like a car that people would be delighted to own even now and would love the styling of it. It doesn't feel dated, it doesn't feel twee, it is absolutely gorgeous, and the quality and the finish of everything inside here is exceptional. Now, I'm sure that eagle-eyed viewers have already noticed that the front seats have been retrimmed. However, the back seats haven't, and they are really a very good match to the front. Quite often you see people retrim partially and they get it so very wrong. So to whoever did this, bravo, because it is aged well and it matches so very well even after the passing of time. Now, coming inside here, there is quite a lot going on, and remember, this is a very interesting period in time, because as I was talking to you about when we were looking around the car, this is part of that rationalised range that comes in the 1940s. So Rolls Royce start thinking like a lot of other manufacturers. Parts begin to be shared. Things become a little bit simpler in many different ways, but also they haven't forgotten the nice touches. Now, I want to draw your attention to something that you may not have noticed. I zoomed in on it when we were walking around, but I'm going to show you again. So look at these quarter lights. Can you see this little piece of glass on the outside? And I said to David, the owner, I said, why is that there? And he said, well, the reason that is because when you've got your quarter light open and you're driving, let me show you. Hold on. And you see like that. Now, what would usually happen is for those of you that have got quarter lights that know what I'm talking about, the rain would run off, and sometimes it runs into the car. When you attach this piece of glass, it then runs to the outside of the vehicle. And this car is just full of thoughtful, beautiful touches like that. And you start to see why the vehicle cost, I think it was £4,704, which included tax. There were some additional costs for things that many people chose, but I'll talk to you about those when we get to them. So looking at our layout from left to right, it might look a bit different to others that you've seen, because remember, when these first came to market in 1949, they were sold abroad only. Now, a lot of this, of course, is linked to Rolls trying to recoup money, because from 1939 to 1945, they didn't make cars. Everything was focused on aeroplanes and war effort. Even though they were doing a bit of car design in the background, really that money was coming in there. So it wasn't the same as it had always been. So when they come back to this, they also have to play into their export or die model, which the government had put in, which meant that I think it was something like 80–90% of the steel that you were allocated had to go into vehicles that were then sold abroad. And the idea was to bring money back into this country. Now, if you want to see advertising around this from the time, there's some really interesting old little videos, and they must have run before films at the cinema, because essentially it says the reason they're doing it, and they know that people are going to want cars, they're going to want all the other bits that their friends have got overseas. They say, well, actually, the reason we need to bring money in is because we need to bring in food, we need to bring in supplies. And essentially it shows a cartoon, it's really good, and it shows things disappearing. It shows a chair disappearing, food, a plate, cutlery. It's a great bit of kit, and it really does bring home to you just how impoverished the nation was at the end of the war. Now, I know a lot of people say, well, weren't we making our own food? Really interesting fact for you, Britain has not been able to make all their own food and has relied on imports since the 1700s. I've spent far too long online. Anyway, let me show you what we've got in here. So first of all, we have got this beautiful glove box with a clock that actually works. I swear, half of them don't work at the time. Now, coming inside here, it's a little mini time capsule. We've got a little calculator, we've got some cassette tapes, and then I must show you this. Look at this. It's a little record book for motorists, and inside are all of David's records. Just being careful not to show his telephone number on screen there, because anyone rings him to try and buy this beautiful car. But he keeps records. I'll show you a blank page there of all the mileage that he does. I love stuff like that. But as well, it just keeps reference to repairs and sundries and anything else. History like that is just such a gift when you buy a car. Now, coming into the centre here, this for me is where the car begins to shine even more so, because I'm going to show you my favourite feature on this car, and it is the picnic table. Look at this. And coming out from the middle of that is a cigarette ashtray. So you could be having a ciggy and a sandwich as you enjoy your time in your lovely Rolls Royce. Although smoking something like this, I'm not sure you would. You've also got ashtrays in the back as well, and you've got picnic tables, and you've even got a little vanity mirror with lights around it. Who could ask for more? Coming into the centre here, you've got your windscreen wipers, you've got your instrument lights. I keep forgetting what that stands for. Coming down here, you've got your cigar lighter, and you've got your first of your gauges, which shows all of that above there. So you've got your water temperature gauge, fuel, and you've got your oil. You've got this little button up here. Now, if you press that, it then changes the fuel gauge to be an oil gauge, and that just tells you how much oil's in there. So you can see that marker on there. Coming into the middle, you've just got some various bits and pieces. You've got your starter, you've got your ignition. And so to start this is going to blow some people's minds. You do not need the key. You turn the ignition to on, you turn this to on, and then you press the starter button. But I'll show you that in just a second. Coming over from there, you've got your speedo. Now this foxed me when I first drove it, because it runs from slow to fast. So it's backwards, which kind of confused me at first, but it is what it is. Coming over from here, you've got your heater, and that's a 2-speed there. I should probably have mentioned as well, and you are going to be so shocked by this for 1954, those wipers are twin speed. Love that. Over from here, you've got your rear window heater, and you've got the window demist as well. So lots of stuff for a car from the 1950s. Up here, you've got your indicators, and what really got me about the indicators earlier was I thought they were going to be down here, and this is what confused me. Let me show you. It's this suspension, so you can adjust it from hard to normal, but David said that it's always best on hard. He said when you go to normal, it can feel a little bit wafty, and I liked how it felt when he took me out for a drive, and I thought, no, we're going to leave it on hard. Now listen to the horn. The horn is beautiful. Just commands respect as you drive along, doesn't it? Coming over from there, you've got your windscreen washers, and you've got a couple of other bits just down here, just a few controls. Now, I want to show you possibly the thing that has been the hardest to learn in this car is the gear change, because I bet you're looking at where my legs are positioned. If you can see them, I'm not sure if you can, but my legs are just sided over to the middle. You'll notice there's no space between the chairs, and you'll notice that there's no column change. So where is the gear change? Well, it's down on my right hand side between the driver's door and the driver's seat. So you've got, I would say, 5-6 inches of room, and it's seated just forward from the driving seat. Now you can see here, as I'm chatting to you, how you change through the gearbox. You've got 4 forward gears, you've got no synchro on first, and to get into reverse, you need to push it down and come forward again in almost the same motion as you have for first gear. Now, a little like when I take out American vehicles or vehicles from the continent, it is slightly strange to think about changing gear with your right hand when you're so used to doing it with your left. However, it does start to become quite natural as you go along. One of the strangest things about it is when you change the gear, it feels like it slides and not like it changes in the same normal way that it does. It's hard for me to explain, but it feels like quite a different motion. I like it though, because it feels very sure when you're changing that gear. Now, if you've ever looked at one from the continent or one from America, you'll be saying to me, Steph, I've been in one before that's a manual, and it's been left-hand drive, and it wasn't like that. It was column change. Well, here's the thing. When they sold abroad and they were left-hand drive, they used column change. They didn't use this setup. Although a lot of people, of course, did go for the automatic. Now, if you went for the automatic in the UK, it was available from 1952 and it cost £70, so it's quite a sizable cost, but a lot of people went for it because they were already spending an awful lot of money on the car, so they thought, well, we might as well spend the extra £70 and have that brilliant new technology at our fingertips. However, this is one of the 50, yes, 50, that got fitted with manual, so quite an interesting car to be taking out, in my opinion. Now, I've rattled on about this car. I absolutely adore it. I think it's great. I love the size of it. It feels so drivable. And no, we don't have power steering, but you'll see when we go out that even though we've got that 40-foot turning circle, you don't feel like you're at a disadvantage. Everything feels so very easy. Now, before we go out on an adventure, let me start the car up and let you have a listen. Right, let's go on an adventure. And that, my friends at home, is us up into that top gear. So that's the 4th gear. Now, I don't know if you spotted it or you may have heard it in the background, but the car is rigged up with trafficators. Now, I'm showing you what a trafficator is there. Some of you may know them as semaphores. They're known by both names. It just really depends where you live. Anyway, the great thing about these is they've been fitted with something called flashicators, which really does help other drivers to understand what is going on, because of course you don't learn about trafficators anymore on your driving test. Now, the other lovely thing is it does have what I would refer to as standard indicators, front and rear. So it's just nice that nobody has filled those trafficators in, because a lot of people do that, and it is such a shame because it's a piece of history lost. Now, as we look down the bonnet, you can probably see that beautiful Spirit of Ecstasy, and you might have noticed when we're walking around, she's kneeling down. Now, the idea behind this was Rolls felt that because this was a relatively small car for the range, the standing mascot was just far too beefy to sit on, and it looked out of proportion. So they then had it kneeling just to have it there, but not be so over the top. But I don't think it detracts in any way, being in that kneeling position. Now, as we drive along, you can probably see just how easy this is. I'm not having to overcorrect myself. The seating position is just perfect. I can see to the end of the bonnet, and there really is no trouble at all. Now, you might be expecting, because this is an older vehicle, that it will be quite slow. Well, I'm here to tell you not so, because the top speed that Motor Magazine were able to achieve in 1954 was 94 miles per hour. I was trying to think that, I can't remember if it was 92 or 94, but it's a decent speed, and it gets up 0 to 60 in less than 20 seconds. In terms of fuel economy, the only fuel economy I've been able to gauge online, no pun intended whatsoever, is the old style. So it did, I believe on the motor test, 15.4 miles per imperial gallon when they took it out on test. But without sounding vulgar and talking about money, if you own something like this, I don't think you're going to be scrabbling around in your last few shillings for a tank of fuel. So that's really not a huge going concern. Now as we cruise along, I must tell you at home, this is one of the most delightful cars that I have driven in quite some time. The suspension is just wonderful, even taking into account the modern roads of today, which, as you can probably feel coming up there, can just be quite awful, to be honest. It just takes it all in its stride. It cruises along, and the gear change, once you get used to changing with your other hand, is really no trouble whatsoever, and the gear change is relatively smooth. Now I have taken a wrong turning and really just realised, but anyway, we'll just carry on. But now, as you can see here, it comes to a stop without having to place much pressure on those brakes whatsoever. Now the brakes on this are of course drum brakes. They are power assisted, and the way the system works is the faster you're going, the more power is available to you to help bring the car to a complete stop, which is a great system. It was developed by somebody else, and goodness me, I can't remember the name of it. It's an overseas company, and Rolls Royce saw the technology and they said, we have got to have this on our cars. And they had this in, I believe, until the 60s. It was quite some time anyway. It's either the 60s or the 80s, but they used it for quite a while, and it's a really good system. And it means that not only have you got the power to be going out onto the motorway and doing those long trips, you've also got the stopping power as well, because let's face it, that is just as important as being able to keep up with all the traffic. Now I'm going to be honest, I'm really struggling to find something negative to say about this car. And I'm not just going to say something negative for the sake of it, because for me, this encapsulates everything that you want from a luxury classic experience. The vehicle's not too big, you can fit it into a standard parking space. Some of these old Rollses are enormous and you really do struggle to park them in a standard space, whereas this fits relatively nicely, especially compared to one of these bloated modern SUVs. It drives so beautifully. The steering wheel is so elegant and slender in your hands, and as you feed it through, it just feels so pleasurable. And it really is a car that, and remember, it's that turning point for Rolls where the cars go from you're being driven by a chauffeur to you're driving yourself. And this is a car designed so that people can enjoy driving, something that I think we forget so much in modern motoring, because so many cars now are just designed as soulless, safe lumps to take us from A to B with no fanfare, no excitement, no glamour. And this flies in the face of all of that. It's decadent, it's beautiful, it's just everything you want in a special motoring experience. So do I think those maintenance bills would be low? Absolutely not. They would not be comparable to an everyman car, something like an Austin A35 or that Wolseley, that Riley 1.5 that we took out the other week. But those aren't the same customers that are shopping for one of these in the 1950s. And I completely see why people bought into these. I'm surprised that more didn't sell, if I'm truly honest, because it feels like a car that you could cruise in quite easily. You've got that 4.5 litre engine, so you've got everything you need, but I guess it was just that price, because £4,700 was a big lump. But I'm just surprised that more didn't sell to places like America and what would have then been known as the Empire, because I think this would have just gone down an absolute tree. It is beautiful. So negative wise, I'm really struggling because this is just wonderful. Now I'm going to try and find my way home. I've been so distracted by the driving experience and enjoying it so very much that I've lost my way, and I need to try and find the way back to David's house now. But look, I've had a great afternoon. I really hope you've enjoyed the car. Would I own one of these myself? Well, if I had a lottery win, absolutely. It is everything you could desire in a Rolls Royce and so much more. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Would you like one, or do you think they are just a bit old-fashioned? That's it from me. I'm going to get back home, get back on the standard, and wherever you are, take care and drive safely.